Just the usual, Brenda. Black coffee. And try not to spill it this time. Jonathan Sterling didn't glance up, his focus pinned to the flickering stock prices on his tablet. Another day, another power breakfast at the same worn downtown diner. Booth. Why here? Tradition. Proximity to his gleaming Sterling Corp tower. Maybe a subconscious need to ground himself amidst the chrome and glass of his empire. Brenda just nodded, tightening her grip on the heavy coffee pot. Invisible. That's what she was to him. Part of the worn Formica tabletops, the faded vinyl. Seats, the perpetual smell of frying bacon. Just the waitress. He came in every weekday morning, 7:15 a.m. sharp. Sat in the same corner booth. Ordered the same black coffee, sometimes adding toast. Dry. Never made eye contact. Never used her name unless issuing a curt order or a complaint. He barked commands into his ever-present Bluetooth earpiece, billion-dollar decisions punctuated by the clatter of cheap diner cutlery. Brenda had served him for nearly 2 years now. She knew his tells. The slight tightening around his eyes when a deal soured. The almost imperceptible smirk when he crushed a competitor. The way he meticulously folded his napkin before launching into a particularly aggressive phone call. She saw the expensive watch, the tailored suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent for her cramped studio apartment across town. She saw the casual arrogance, the assumption that the world revolved around his needs, his schedule. She was just scenery, background noise, easily ignored, easily dismissed. It used to bother her, the blatant disregard, the way he and others, like him who frequented the diner as a quick refueling stop, looked straight through her. But annoyance had slowly curdled into something else. Observation. Quiet calculation. Because Brenda wasn't just pouring coffee. She was listening, watching, piecing things together. Diners like this, wedged between towering office buildings, were echo chambers for unguarded conversations. Especially from men like Sterling who felt too important, too insulated by their wealth and power, to worry about who might be clearing their plates. Brenda heard snippets, overheard calls Sterling took when he stepped away from the booth, but not quite far enough. Saw documents he glanced at, then shoved carelessly back into his briefcase, sometimes missing a page that fluttered, unnoticed, to the floor near the trash bin. She found crumpled notes, discarded memos hastily scribbled on napkins, things Sterling, in his self-absorbed bubble, considered insignificant refuse. But Brenda had learned to read between the lines. She'd seen figures that didn't seem right, names of shell corporations whispered on phone calls, vague references to Project Aquila, followed by hushed tones and nervous glances. Nothing concrete, not at first, just fragments, whispers. Enough to pique her interest, enough to make her pay closer attention. She started keeping a small notebook tucked in her apron pocket, jotting down dates, times, overheard phrases, company names. Connecting dots Sterling assumed were too scattered, too insignificant for a simple waitress to ever notice. It wasn't about grand justice, not initially. It was about curiosity, a challenge. Could she, the invisible woman, understand the workings of this powerful man's hidden world? Could she piece together the puzzle he unknowingly scattered around her every morning? Then she found the crumpled environmental report summary, tucked deep in the trash bin near his booth one rainy Tuesday. It detailed chemical runoff levels far exceeding legal limits at a Sterling Corp subsidiary plant upstate, a plant near Havenwood, her hometown. A town plagued by unexplained illnesses, families struggling with mounting medical bills. Families like her own cousins, whose son battled a rare respiratory condition the doctors couldn't explain. Suddenly, it wasn't just a puzzle anymore. It felt personal, deeply personal. Sterling wasn't just arrogant, he was potentially poisoning people. People she knew, maybe even people she loved. The knowledge sat heavy in her stomach, a cold knot of anger beneath the practiced professional smile she wore like a uniform. What could she do? Go to the authorities? With what? crumpled notes and overheard whispers. They'd laugh her out of the office. Sterling, with his army of lawyers, would crush her. She needed proof. Something undeniable. Something Sterling couldn't dismiss or bury. So she kept watching. Kept listening. More intently now. Her invisibility became her shield, her greatest asset. Sterling continued his routine, oblivious, barking orders, conducting business, treating her like furniture. He complained about the coffee being lukewarm one morning, shoving the cup towards her without looking up. Brenda refilled it, her hand steady, but her mind raced. She'd overheard him mention a specific offshore account name on a call yesterday. Nightingale Holdings. She'd scribbled it down. Maybe that was the key. Following the money? The next week, Sterling seemed more stressed than usual. His calls were clipped, tense. He spent less time on his tablet, more time staring blankly out the window, jaw tight. He barely touched his toast. Brenda felt the atmosphere shift. Something was happening within Sterling Corp. Something related to Project Aquila? Or the Havenwood plant? Was someone else asking questions? She needed to make a move. But how? Directly confronting him seemed suicidal. Leaking her fragmented information anonymously felt unsatisfying, unlikely to make a real impact against a man like Sterling. She felt trapped, holding dangerous knowledge with no safe way to use it. She considered just quitting, walking away, trying to forget what she knew, what she suspected. But the image of her sick little cousin, struggling for breath, wouldn't leave her mind. The thought of Sterling sitting here day after day, responsible yet utterly untouched, fueled a cold resolve. There had to be a way. The opportunity, the midpoint twist she didn't even know she was waiting for, came unexpectedly. Sterling was on a particularly heated call, pacing near the diner's front window. He gestured angrily, his expensive briefcase, momentarily forgotten on the seat beside his half-eaten toast. Brenda was clearing the adjacent table when she saw it. A slim, silver flash drive had slipped partially out of the briefcase's side pocket, nestled against the worn vinyl. Sterling hadn't noticed. He was too engrossed in his call, yelling about breached contracts and invoking names of lawyers. Brenda's heart hammered against her ribs. Could this be it? The proof? It was incredibly risky. He could turn around any second, someone else might see. But the image of Havenwood, of her cousin, spurred her on. With trembling fingers, pretending to wipe down Sterling's table, she deftly scooped up the flash drive, palming it smoothly, tucking it deep into her apron pocket alongside her notebook. Her hands shook violently now. She forced herself to breathe slowly, finish clearing the table, and walk calmly back towards the kitchen, the small piece of metal feeling like a burning coal against her hip. Sterling finished his call, slammed his phone down, grabbed his briefcase, and threw a $20 bill onto the table, far more than usual, a sign of his distraction. He stormed out without a backward glance. He hadn't noticed. Brenda leaned against the kitchen door frame, gulping for air. What had she done? Grand theft? Maybe. Possession of potentially explosive corporate secrets? Definitely. She had crossed a line. No turning back now. That evening, in her small apartment, after triple-checking her door was locked, she plugged the flash drive into her aging laptop. It was password protected. Of course it was. But Sterling, for all his power, was also predictable. Arrogant. Brenda tried variations of his kids' names, his birthday, Sterling Corp slogans. Nothing. Then she tried Aquila. The drive opened. Folder after folder bloomed across the screen. Project Aquila. Internal memos. Unredacted environmental audits for the Havenwood plant, showing deliberate data manipulation, falsified reports sent to the EPA. Financial spreadsheets detailing payments to shell corporations, including Nightingale Holdings, clearly designed to bribe local officials and suppress complaints near the plant. Emails discussing containment strategies for negative press. It was all there, cold, hard proof of systematic criminal activity, sanctioned from the very top, sanctioned by Sterling himself. Brenda felt sick, vindicated, terrified. She copied everything onto a cheap burner drive she bought from a corner store, wiped the original Sterling drive meticulously using software she barely understood, but followed online instructions for carefully. Now came the hardest part. What next? She slept little that night, the weight of the information pressing down on her. The next morning felt surreal. She went to work, put on her uniform, her smile, poured coffee, took orders, acted normal. When Sterling walked in at 7:15 a.m., settling into his usual booth, Brenda approached, coffee pot in hand. Her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. This was it. No turning back. "Morning, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice even, calm. He grunted, already absorbed in his tablet. She poured his coffee. Black. Just how he liked it. As she set the pot down, she leaned in slightly, keeping her voice low, audible only to him. "Those Aquila project reports are quite something," she murmured, almost casually. "Especially the Havenwood runoff data. Very creative accounting." Sterling froze, absolutely froze. His fingers stopped moving on the tablet screen. Slowly, very slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes, cold and calculating, met hers for the first time. Really met hers. The arrogance vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief, then a dawning, chilling awareness. He saw her now, not as Brenda the waitress, not as background noise, but as someone who knew, someone who held the key to his destruction. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet, a low growl beneath the surface. "Calm." Brenda held his gaze, refusing to flinch. She didn't need to say anything more. Her brief statement, the specific mention of Aquila and Havenwood, was enough. The power dynamic in the worn diner booth had just irrevocably shifted. The invisible waitress suddenly held all the cards. Sterling stared at her, his mind clearly racing, assessing the threat, calculating angles. He opened his mouth, perhaps to threaten, perhaps to dismiss, but Brenda spoke first, her voice still quiet but firm. "I wiped your drive clean, Mr. Sterling. Put it back in your briefcase side pocket before you left yesterday. You never even noticed it was gone." His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She hadn't just found something. She'd actively taken it, accessed it, and returned it without his knowledge. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, calculated, by her. "What do you want?" he finally asked, the question clipped, tense. Brenda allowed herself a small, humorless smile. "Justice? Maybe. Or maybe just for the people in Havenwood to breathe clean air, to know the truth." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I have copies, of course, sent securely to places you can't reach. Lawyers, journalists, people who will know what to do if something unfortunate happens to, say, a clumsy waitress." She picked up the coffee pot. "Your move, Mr. Sterling." She turned and walked away, heading back towards the counter, leaving him sitting there, stunned into silence, the black coffee growing cold in his cup. The hidden truth wasn't merely the corporate crime. It was the complete underestimation of the woman pouring his coffee, the unseen observer who became the catalyst for his downfall, driven not by greed, but by a quiet, burning desire for accountability rooted in the poisoned soil of her own hometown. Sterling sat motionless for a long time before abruptly standing, leaving his coffee untouched, and walking out of the diner, his powerful stride suddenly looking less confident, more hunted. How often do we overlook the people serving us, never realizing the power held in quiet observation, and what secrets might crumble an empire if the invisible suddenly decided to speak? Drop your theory in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where the truth is served alongside the Daily Special.